Hi, my name is Dom. Welcome to my channel. Um, I am here today to talk about my Stephen King ranking. I have currently read 41 books by Mr. Stephen King. Um, some I love a lot, some not as much. I have yet to find a book that I hated, but there are definitely some that I would rank at the bottom. So, um, I'm going to try to tell a little bit about each of the books that I read, at least the ones that I can remember. There are a few, I would say, in the middle that I think um, I will probably revisit at a further date just because I don't really remember them, unfortunately, that well. Um, they didn't stick with me for whatever reason, whether that was just being distracted or just um, didn't register that well with me. So I will probably revisit some of these at a future date, but they were definitely uh, not something that I remembered very well. So, without further ado, I am going to start my ranking. Also, just for the reference, I did not include any of the non-fiction Stephen King books, and I am reading them in chronological order in the way that he wrote them. So, from Carrie through his current book, Holly, I have not. I have finished 41 books, so I'm about halfway through my reading currently. I will do an update video when I have completed all of them. Um, so yeah, without further ado, let me get into this. The first book on my ranking here will be Cycle of the Werewolf. Um, So I didn't hate this book. I don't think it's terrible. The Bernie Wrightson illustrations are really good. Um, it's it's just not really a novel. It's interesting. It's almost like a calendar with blurbs on it. I think it was done as a calendar at one point. But it is pretty interesting as a kind of experimental thing that he did. I don't hate it, but it doesn't really read in an interesting way. It's very short. And actually, I enjoy the movie based on this Silver Bullet a lot more. So, check it out if it sounds like something you're interested in. It's werewolves. It's kind of cool, but yeah, not my favorite. Coming in at number 40, The Tommyknockers. Um, this one is interesting. This took me longer to read than any of his other books. It is a bit of a doorstopper. I did not love it. Um, it drags at points. It's confusing at points. I know this is the one. This was the last one he did um, on cocaine during that period. This is definitely one I think can be a bit of a slog for some. I have met people surprisingly who say this is their favorite book, but for me, this one doesn't do much of anything. The story is kind of confusing. It's aliens. It's they spend a lot of time digging in the woods for this ship, whatever. It just kind of drags on. There's parts where he just kind of drones on about the town. I think there are too many characters, not uninteresting characters, but too many. There could have been less, and I definitely think this book could have been shorter. I think even Stephen King himself said as much. So yeah, that's my number 40. At number 39, uh, The Regulators. This book started out. kind of interesting. I actually don't remember it that well, but I remember it being very strange and being kind of like I'm not really sure what I thought of it. It was very bizarre. Um, so I'm not. I don't really. Unfortunately, I don't really have a lot to say about this one because I honestly don't remember it that well. But I do remember that I did love it terribly. It was kind of weird. I liked Desperation better, but personally, I know a lot of people will say love one or the other. I wasn't crazy about either one, but Desperation was definitely higher than this. Number 38. Nightmares and Dreamscapes. This is one of his short story collections. Yeah, it. I honestly do not remember a single one of the stories in this off the top of my head. Um, I'm not saying they were bad. I honestly don't remember this one that well. The Night Flyer, I remember that. That was pretty good. Other than that, I honestly couldn't tell you a single thing about any of these other stories other than the names or sort of ring a bell. But other than that, I couldn't really tell. So this is probably one I need to revisit. Moving on. So this is number what? Let's see. 37, I think. Roadwork. This is one of his Bachman books. Um, I don't think it's terrible. I know some people have this at the bottom of their list. They don't love it. I thought it was fine. The ending's pretty cool, but there are definitely a lot of books that rank higher than this. It's not the most memorable story. It's pretty simplistic, but I don't think it's awful. So, yeah, that's number 37. See, number 36, another Bachman book, The Running Man. Um, Not bad. A good foray into sci-fi for Stephen King. I do like this one. Um, the main character, not very memorable, not very well developed. He's okay, but definitely not King's best characterization. I do like the movie, but if you have seen the movie, just be aware they are almost nothing alike, other than like kind of the game show aspect, but they play out very differently, and there's very little that they share. But yeah, this one not bad. Number 35, I believe. This is Four Past Midnight. I know some people have this a lot higher on their ranking, but honestly, I did not love any of these stories. Um, Maybe some people will be mad at me for saying that. The Langoliers was probably the one I hated the least, but it was really weird. The concept, I think, was better than the execution. I liked the idea of being trapped in the in between time. Was kind of an interesting idea, but it was just very bizarre. Yeah, Secret Window, Secret Garden. It's all right. Um, Library Policeman. Really messed up in the worst kind of way. I didn't. It's kind of gross, and there's some stuff in there that I just did not care for. And then the Sundog, I honestly didn't remember being that thrilled by that one either. So yeah, that's my number 35. Number 34. So you might be mad at me for this. Carrie, his first book. Um, it's good. I like the way it's written with the newspaper clippings and everything. I think that's kind of cool. But it just didn't really grip me that much. It was the first of this run through that I'm doing. Although the first Stephen King book that I ever read, as an aside, was Pet Cemetery when I was probably like 15 years old. I did read that, but that was the first and only one I ever read until I decided to do this read through. Um, so this is the second Stephen King book that I've ever read, and it's all right. It's not terrible. I'll probably reread it at some point. I definitely think it's worth that much. I actually liked the movie better. But yeah, not bad. Let's see, 33 Eyes of the Dragon. Um, it's pretty good. It's a Stephen King fantasy novel. Um, so it's an interesting thing for him. So obviously it's not his usual fare, but it's okay. It's got some interesting ties to the Dark Tower series, but overall, it's not a super memorable story for me. This might be one that I have to reread and revisit at some point. I did like, I do remember kind of liking it, but I don't remember a lot about it. Um, but yeah, that's where that one stands as of right now. Number 32, I believe. So this is Rose Matter. This is definitely one I need to reread. I don't remember a ton about it. I do remember it was about a woman trying to escape her abusive husband. I remember there were some Dark Tower connections and at least one connection to another book that I can think of. But yeah, I don't remember it very well, and it's definitely one I need to revisit. I'm not saying it's bad or that it even necessarily belongs in the spot that I have it currently. If I reread it, it might end up higher, but after this reading, and as of right now, this is kind of where it sits on my list. Number 31. As I said, Desperation. I liked it better than the Regulators, but I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I did enjoy quite a bit of it. I think it's a little long, but I don't think it was terrible. The villain and Trajan is really good. Um, very creepy. There was lots of interesting stuff in here that happened, but I do like a lot of other Stephen King books better, so that's where this one is going to sit, unfortunately. Number 30. And this might upset some people. I know a lot of people, this is like their favorite Dark Tower book, The Drawing of the Three. Um, I didn't hate it, but for me, and this is one I might need to reread, but I don't know, like the whole thing with the lobstrosities, there was a lot of that. It kind of dragged on. The scenes on the beach were kind of boring for me. Um, when he was going into the other worlds, that some of that stuff was pretty cool, especially the part with Eddie. I really liked, but overall, not my favorite. But it's definitely one that, upon rereading, maybe it'll change. But right now, yeah, not my favorite Stephen King book. Number 29, Insomnia. So I know this one has lot of mixed opinions. Some people really like it, and some people not so much. For me, it's kind of in the middle. Um, I do like Ralph Roberts' character quite a bit. I thought he was pretty interesting. I thought the concept was interesting. One thing I will definitely say though, I think this book is too long. I think it drags on a bit. I did like the Derry connections. I did like that certain character from It does make a reappearance here. That's kind of cool. There are some Dark Tower connections that are pretty interesting. I will say it's worth reading, but just be aware it is a little long, but not terrible. Number 28. This one might upset people yet again. Uh, the Dead Zone. Um, didn't hate it, but it just kind of not really a story that connected with me that much. The political intrigue stuff, the kind of Manchurian Candidate, not literally Manchurian Candidate, but just kind of that, like, you know what I mean if you've read it. But I like the idea of this guy that can kind of see these things. It was interesting with his abilities, but it didn't really connect with me very much. This is another one that I probably need to reread, but not one that I loved, not one that I hated. I don't hate it. I liked it fine, but it just compared to a lot of his other books, this one's just not as big for me. Okay, sorry about that. I think this is number 27. So this is the Gunslinger, first book in the Dark Tower. Um, I think I probably like this more than some people did. I really liked the kind of. It's almost kind of like a short story collection. Um, so like, so, but they're all connected, obviously. Um, Personally, I enjoyed it. I found the different stories interesting. I like the Western aesthetic, especially in the first couple stories. But yeah, I know some people aren't crazy fans of this book. They like to brush past it. Personally, I really liked it. But yeah, it's not the best in the series that I've read so far, but I did like it quite a bit. And when I finish all of his books, I do plan to do a full read through rerun of the entire Dark Tower in order all at once, since I'm kind of reading them like all over the place. But yeah, Gunslinger, number 27. Number 26, Skeleton Crew. This one's got some pretty cool stories in it. My personal favorite, probably a lot of people's favorite, The Mist. Really good. Um, Unfortunately, there's quite a few stories in here that I either don't remember or didn't really care for. Um, Trying to think. The Raft is really good. The Jaunt was interesting. Survivor Type is the classic King book story. Word Processors of the Gods. So yeah, there's some interesting ones in here. Definitely The Mist I would put up at the top of his. If I was looking at all his like novellas and short stories, that's probably one of my favorites. But it's a mixed bag for me. There's some that are really good, some that are just kind of meh, and a few that I'm really not that crazy about. But yeah, it's not bad. Number 25, The Long Walk. Um, I really like this one. It's another Bachman. Was I think this is one of the first stories he ever wrote. It is pretty interesting reading this and then kind of seeing where he's at, where I'm reading now, and how he's changed as an author. I did like the whole kind of story, how it's all just following these series of boys doing a long walk, and they're being forced to kind of walk along, and you hear that title, you hear that description, you're like, oh, that how interesting can that be? That sounds really stupid, but actually, it's very interesting. The way it's told is absolutely fascinating, and I was riveted all the way from page one all the way till the end. It's very good. Yeah, it's not my top, but we're at the point where it's like I don't hate any of these books. I just had to put them in an order because obviously something's got to be at the top. But yeah, this is a really good book. Number 24. Some people might hate me. I don't care. Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. Really love this book. I read I think we read the pop-up version of this when I was in school. But yeah, I just read this one not too long ago. And I really liked it. I loved the concept, the girl in the woods. The whole bit with Tom Gordon was really neat. Um, there's some interesting suspense and just hearing this character's thoughts. You really care about her. You really care about what happens to her, and I could not wait to find out what happened. I do think it ended slightly abruptly, but overall, not a bad. Number 23, Thinner. I'm not sure this might be my favorite Bachman book. At least the ones I've read. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Gypsy curses a guy, um, makes him lose weight. Pretty creepy, pretty interesting. Riveting story. Really enjoyed it. Uh, Loved seeing how it went through everything. How this guy is kind of panicked slowly as he goes through the story, especially as it gets towards the end. Is very good. Probably my favorite of the Bachman books. I really like it. Number 22, Bag of Bones. I probably like this more than a lot of people, but I don't care. I really liked this as a ghost story and as a character study. The characters in this were really good. I really enjoyed reading about them. Mike Noonan is a great Stephen King protagonist. I loved trying to see what would happen. I thought the stuff with what's her name, the ghost lady. I forget her name. But yeah, I thought that stuff was pretty creepy. I thought there was definitely some good scares in this one. Probably one of the scarier books for my money, and I did really enjoy this one. So that's number 21, I think. All right, next, Dolores Claiborne. Um, I really like this one. This one is different. For those of you who know, this book has no chapters or breaks. It is one long, constant stream. It's all being told as her kind of testimony in police station, and it is very interesting. Way more interesting than you could possibly think that would be. She's just basically going through her life and of how she, kind of worked for this older woman and all the things she experienced there, and then all the stuff with her husband, and it's riveting. It's absolutely fascinating, and Stephen King definitely knows how to make characters better than anybody else I've seen, and this is a prime example of that. So, number 18, Hearts in Atlantis. This is the most recent one I think I read. And if it wasn't for the follow-up stories, I don't think I'd love this as much. I really like this, especially the first story. So this is, for those who don't know, this is two novellas and three short stories. They're connected, um, and the first story in this one, Low Men, Yellow Coats, is absolutely phenomenal. Some of Stephen King's best work, in my opinion. Love the character of Ted Brodigan, one of my favorite Stephen King characters, easily. Um, Loved reading about him and Bobby Garfield and all the stuff that happens there. And there's some interesting kind of Dark Tower connections, and it's a fascinating story. I highly recommend it. The follow-up stories aren't bad, but I don't think they hold up to the main story, especially the kind of three short stories at the back. Didn't love them. Hearts in Atlantis, the second story, was, I think, went on a little long, but not bad. But yeah, overall, especially for that first story, this is number 18. Number 17, one of his big, big classics, Cujo. Yeah, you all know the story. You love it. Uh, Rabid Dog. What's not to love, right? Um, just crazy. This is another one that doesn't have chapters, so it's a little interesting. I do believe there are breaks. Maybe I'm not remembering. Anyway, uh, yeah. So this was one of his Castle Rock stories. Um, so obviously, you had the Dead Zone, and you had this one, but oh man, uh, there's some creepy stuff in here. He can take Stephen King could take just about anything and make it scary, I believe, especially at this point in his career, and he finds ways to make this dog really terrifying, especially, you know, and he loves to put kids in peril. Obviously, he That's a pretty frequent thing with him, and he does it really well here, and it is pretty outstanding. So definitely check that one out. 16, I believe. Needful Things. This is a long book, and it needs to be. Um, there are a lot of characters in here, and I know I criticized Tom Knockers for that, but this one, it works really well. He develops all the characters. You care about these characters. You fascinated by everything happens with these characters. There's a crazy amount of stuff that happens in here, and it gets absolutely insane, especially towards the end. Um, yeah, this guy comes to town and sets up a shop, and basically people go in and they start buying things, and things slowly go off the rails, and it just, like a freight train, it just starts careening towards the end until it reaches the end and just kind of boom. So yeah, I highly recommend this one. Definitely worth a read. Up next, uh, Night Shift. This is a really good collection of Stephen King stories, and for my money, I would say either this or Different Seasons be best thing if you just want to like tell your friends, okay, they're like, what is it about Stephen King? What's so interesting about Stephen King? Give them this. This book is a mix of everything that makes Stephen King great: horror, a little bit of heart wrenching drama, crazy characters, just lots of neat stuff. There are so many good stories in this one, like, and most of them are extremely memorable. I don't think there's a single one in here that I hated. Um, yeah, these are some top notch goodies in here. Yeah, definitely a great one. Next, The Wastelands, Dark Tower 3. I did like this one better than the drawing of the three. Um, I thought, a lot more happens in this one. They end up in, what was the city called? I don't know. Whatever. The big city in the Dark Tower that's slipping my mind right now. But yeah, it's got a lot of cool stuff in here. There's some awesome moments. My favorite being, of course, Blaine the Mono. Blaine is another of my favorite King's characters, probably one of my favorite King villains. Fantastic. What's not to love? He's a insane AI train. Um, Definitely a King thing for sure. This is kind of where the story really take off for me, and it ends on a cliffhanger, but it's really good, and I highly recommend it. Obviously, if you're going to read this, you should probably read the whole Dark Tower. Although I definitely would recommend. There's a few books that I would recommend. Um, in addition to the Dark Tower, but we can talk about that at a later date. Next, many people say this is magnum opus. It's not bad. The Stand. Um, there's another one. I have complaints about the length, but it is very good. It is very long. This is on like over 1,100 pages. It is a very long book. There are a lot of characters in here. The majority of them are pretty interesting. There's a few that not as much. Um, I remember liking quite a bit of it, and then it kind of gets maybe halfway or so, and I just feel like it kind of slows down, and it's just, I don't know. I don't hate this book. I really love it. Obviously, it's closer to the top than the bottom, so obviously I don't hate it. But it's probably one I need to reread. I read it pretty early in my reading, and this is obviously the uncut version, which I think is what most people have read at this point. But um, I liked it. It's pretty interesting. The ending was kind of but overall, not bad. The journey is very good. Dark Half. This one is really good. It's got some great creepiness to it. It's guy. He's a writer. Creates a pseudonym, and the pseudonym comes to life and is trying to kill him. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty crazy. Nobody believes him, obviously, that this thing is coming to get him. He's trying to get away from this, crazy, nutty character that he created, and it's got some great scares and some great moments, and it's one of my favorites for sure. Check it out. Gerald's Game. I love this book. It's very good. It is a companion kind of with Dolores Claiborne, so I do recommend kind of reading them together because there's some minor connections between the two. But yeah, this one. So yeah, woman and her husband go to a cabin for some, kinky time. And it goes all wrong when, of course, he has a heart attack and she is cuffed to the bed. And pretty much the entire book takes place in that one room, other than some flashbacks. But there is some crazy stuff in here. There's some gross stuff in here. There's some creepy stuff in here. I will say, for those who maybe have problems with abuse, they're a bit of a trigger warning, but I would say it's definitely worth the read. It's very good, and yeah, definitely check this one out. It's a personal favorite. All right, number 11 is Christine. Everybody knows this one, right? Killer car. Kid inherits car, an old car, and it's, you know, of course, this old Plymouth Fury, and it's got a mind of its own, and it's jealous, and it wants him over everybody else, and will stop at nothing to keep anyone from getting between them. And yeah, it's pretty cool to see, Christine, obviously crazy evil car, watching Arnie Cunningham, the main kid, kind of descend into this kind of crazy person as he's kind of, you know, influenced by the evil of the car and just how that goes. And yeah, there's some great characters in here, great story. I really like it. The movie was great too, but I actually think the book is a little better. But it's very good. It's very great. It's classic King. Check it out. All right, now we're on to my top 10. So I don't want anybody to get mad at me for my 10. There might be some in here that not everybody loves as much, but this is my list, not yours. Um, so just keep that in mind. So without further ado, number 10, The Talisman. Obviously, he co-wrote this with Peter Straub, and I really liked this book. It's got some kind of fantasy elements to it. It's kind of like there's kind of an Alice in Wonderland, like whole to another world, like Wizard of Oz type stuff, where this kid kind of ends up in this alternate universe where there's what are called twinners, which are basically alternate versions of people from our universe, and there's all this crazy stuff that happens. There's some really cool characters that he meets in here. Uh, One named Wolf, I know, is a fan favorite for a lot of people. I really love that character too. I definitely say check this one out. It's really good in my opinion. Um, I think it gets kind of overlooked in his catalog, but I think it is absolutely worth the read. All right, number 9. Some people are gonna go crazy. Wizard in Glass, Dark Tower number 4. So far, my favorite Dark Tower book, and I know quite a few people would say this is probably their least favorite Dark Tower book. It's huge, and I get it. Wastelands ends on a cliffhanger, and then you got this giant Roland backstory. Kind of puts the brakes on a little bit, but you know what? That backstory is really freaking good. And I get it. For some people, like, it's just not your thing. But this, it's a western. It's a romance. It's got some fantasy to it. It's got a lot of crazy stuff. It's really really great. Finding out about Roland, I loved it every moment of it. I could not get enough of this story, and I cannot wait to finish the Tower because this is to date the most recent one I've read. So, but it for right now, this has been my current favorite. Number 8, Firestarter. Love this book. This is Stephen King kind of doing like sci-fi again, and yeah, this is such a good book. Easily my favorite villain is in this book, John Rainbird, um, gloriously played by George C. Scott in the film with Drew Barrymore. But yeah, great story. Girl with pyrokinesis kind of gets on the run from this crazy government agency called the Shop that's trying to use her as a weapon. Um, just you really care about this little girl and her father and what's going to happen to them. John Rainbird is such a great character, such a great villain. He is so manipulative and so much fun to read about, and I loved every minute of this book. All right, number 7. Sorry, Salem's Lot. Oh man, this is really good. You love vampires, and not only is this one of my favorite King books, it's my favorite vampire book. Absolutely, the way Stephen King does vampires, the way it's got, it's small town King, something he does better than anybody else. He writes small towns, obviously, and they are always so good. It's such a great story. Love reading this book. There is some really creepy stuff in here. There's one character in here that I do know plays a part later on in the Dark Tower. I haven't gotten that far, but I do know he's in there. But yeah, you like vampires, you like creepy houses, you like reading about lots of cool characters in a small town. So definitely check out Salem's Lot. This is King at some of his absolute best. Um, it's just really great. Um, like lots of great characters in here. Obviously Ben Mears um, coming to town, check out this house, and it's just super creepy, and it is so worth it. Absolutely recommend that book. Number 6, It. Much like The Stand, this is another one. It's over 1,100 pages. But this book is probably the best journey um, you will ever take as far as just um, going on a journey, reading about the characters. You learn to care about these characters so much. I care so much about all these characters, and I love to revisit it someday. But Pennywise is really creepy. A lot of the stuff he does in here like is pretty awesome to read about. There's some really great horror in here. It's great coming of age story. It's great horror story. Um, Maybe a little long at points. And there's definitely, there's can't really talk about without mentioning that scene, which anybody who's read the book knows what I'm talking about. And yeah, not a great. moment, but it's such a short part, so it's an otherwise great novel. I highly recommend this one. Can't recommend it enough. It's so good. Most of you probably know the story, so don't need to spend too much time on it. But yeah, it's amazing. My top five. Number five, The Shining. Um, Hard to do a Stephen King top 10 without this book, and I don't very often see a lot of fans that don't like it. There's probably a few, but it's hard to not like this book. It's really good. For my money, his scariest book for me. I remember sitting there late at night reading this book and just being really creeped out by some of the descriptions of some of the things going on. And, yeah, it is. I mean, most of you know the story, I guess, from the Kubrick adaptation, although obviously the Kubrick adaptation definitely changed some major things. Um, but and honestly, I'm one of those people. I honestly don't really think I prefer one over the other. I like both of them for what they are, and but I also see them as kind of separate things. The Kubrick story is kind of telling a different story, using some very king-like trappings, but it definitely goes in a different direction with it. That's still interesting, but it's different. But yeah, I love the book. The book is really good. It's really creepy. Uh, Lots of neat stuff. The hedge animals were kind of weird, but they were kind of creepy. But yeah, definitely check that one out. Number four, Pet Cemetery. This is the only King book I've read twice, and like I said earlier, I did read this one as a kid, so this is my second time reading through this book, and oh my gosh, it holds up so well. This is another one. It's right up there with The Shining as one of his creepiest books. It is. Um, there. It's hard to say stuff that hasn't been said about this book. You probably all know about it. Obviously, it's King's take on loss and death and how to deal with it and how not to deal with it, obviously, and the consequences of what happens when you don't want to let people go. And it is downright riveting. It is creepy. It is fantastic. It is top notch King, and I am here for it. Number three, Different Seasons. Yes, I know it's a novella collection, but Shawshank Redemption and The Body alone would get this high. Both of those are such good stories. Absolutely love them. You know them both. The other two stories in here, Apt Pupil, also pretty good. The Breathing Method is also pretty interesting. But yeah, this is another one like Night Shift. Your friends asking you what King is all about. There's another one. I'd hand him this. I'd be like, hey, check this out. I'd hand him those two books. You know, great starter for King. Great way to start off and kind of see some of what he can do. Really, really good. I don't need to spend too much time talking about this one, I don't think, because most of you know what it's all about. But yeah. Number two, The Green Mile. Um, so if you've seen the movie, it's one of the few times where I'll say if you've seen the movie, just about read the book. They're so neck and neck that like it's really hard to say that one is better than the other because they're practically the same. But yeah, uh, what can I say about this book? It is so freaking good. I cried several times in this. Um, absolutely some of my favorite characters. John Coffey, maybe top three Stephen King characters. Absolutely love him. You care so much about him. I mean, Stephen King even gets you to care about a mouse in this book. Like you really care about that dang mouse. It. Yeah, this is so good. I can't say enough about it. I if you read if you only read one Stephen King book ever and you don't really like horror, read The Green Mile. It's amazing. It's worth it. You'll love it. I did, and I can't recommend it enough. And my number one, Misery. I can't say enough about this book. I will say one thing, and I know that some people criticize. Yes, it has extracts from the novel that he's writing in here, but you know what? The rest of the book around that is so good. I didn't care. Annie Wilkes is easily one of the greatest villains of all time. Not even just Stephen King villains, but just straight up villains. Just everything about her is like just a joy to read. Just how nuts she really is. It's fantastic. Everything from her, you know, everything from the scene with the hobbling stuff, the crazy swearing, the just awesomely nutty mood swings. It's so freaking good. You're rooting for Paul Sheldon through this whole thing. Like I was just on the edge of my seats. Like, how is he gonna get away? And I've seen the movie, and I was still reading that like this, even though I knew what was gonna happen. I was like, oh man, oh you got to do this. Oh she's coming back. Yeah. This book, nothing. There's no suspense better than this novel. This is my absolute favorite Stephen King book, hands down. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. So that is my Stephen King ranking. 41 books as of current day. I'm reading Dreamcatcher right now, which we'll see how that goes. I know some people not crazy about that one, but anyway, thank you for watching this video. I know it's a little long, but really want to do this and show how far I've come, kind of document for myself and for others. So thanks for checking it out. If you want to like and subscribe, you can. I don't know how much I'm going to do as far as videos. This is partially for my own amusement. So thank you for checking this out if you watch it, and have a nice one.